Hello, I hope you're all having a great day today. This is Joe Berninger checking in with you from the Ohio Pathways Rotary Club. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I am here at home with my wife and my three kids, locked down in the house, as I'm sure most of you are as well. Thank you for the opportunity to come in today to speak to your club about a project, the Guatemala Literacy Project. I'm very, very passionate about it and look forward to telling you more about it today. I hope you're all doing well out there. I hope you're safe. I hope your families are safe and healthy. And most of all, during these difficult times, I hope you're in good spirits. I wish you a warm Rotary greeting, and I look forward to telling you more about this wonderful project and ways that you yourself can get involved. So what is the Guatemala Literacy Project? It's a partnership between Rotary clubs and co-ed to promote literacy in Guatemala. And why Guatemala? Of all places in the world, why Guatemala? Well, Guatemala is one of the poorest and least educated countries in the Western Hemisphere. 4 out of 5 people in rural areas live in poverty, and the average indigenous adult has less than 5 years of formal education. The majority of children drop out of school before they even reach the 6th grade because their parents cannot afford to send them on. A little bit more about me. This is me back in 2002. The kid right in front of me there is, the taller one, is Juan Takashoy. I met Juan when we went to deliver Rotary books to his school. And I remember him because he was a bright kid. And we were looking to play Duck, Duck, Goose that day, and he was the only one who could understand what to do. He pulled in all the other kids. It's Pato, Pato, Ganso in Spanish. He got all the kids going, Pato, Pato, Ganso, organized them all. We had a great time. I learned that he was, as a 2nd grader, he was in his last year of school because his parents could not afford to send him on. We got him on a Rotary-funded scholarship. So that paid for him to go to grade school, to finish junior high, and finally high school. Parents both illiterate, and he became the first one in his family then to graduate from high school. Here he is today, more than 20 years later. He's the first kid to go to college in his family. And that building that he's standing in front of, that is the hotel he manages in Santiago Atitlan. And here he's pictured with his family. My experiences with Juan and in 22 years in Guatemala convinces me of the transformative power of education to change people's lives for the better, to take people in poverty, give them a hand up, and open the door for them to the middle class. And I see many, many stories just like Juan's in Guatemala. And really, the Guatemala Literacy Project is dedicated to creating many, many more kids and success stories like this. I like to say that our motto in the GLP is to make a difference while having fun. This is a fun group to be part of. We call it the family within the family of Rotary. And I extend an invitation to each of you. Come and join us. Come get involved in this. It's a lot of fun. It's a wonderful and incredible way to do Rotary service. So a little more about what is the GLP. I like to call it the perfect marriage between 2 fantastic organizations. One, Rotary International. Rotary brings name recognition, a global network of professionals, resources that can make projects happen. Co-ed, on the other hand, brings connections to the local communities in Guatemala, relationships with the Ministry of Education, and a dedicated staff on the ground of teachers and trainers and social workers to do the projects every day. The GLP is the largest grassroots, multi-club, multi-district, multi-country project in Rotary. And over the past 22 years, the project has included 608 Rotary clubs from 80 districts, from 46 US states and 8 countries. I often, when I speak to Rotary clubs, I ask, can one Rotarian change the world? And the answer, of course, is yes, by working with other Rotarians. Our power as Rotarians comes from working collectively. And here's what we've accomplished working together in the context of this project. 225,000 students directly benefited by Rotary's work over the past 22 years. Enough to fill Great American Ballpark or any sports stadium that you can imagine 5 times over. When the GLP started in 1996, 2 out of every 3 people in rural areas, 2 out of every 3 could not read or write. Imagine that. It's a staggering statistic. Today, it's just 1 out of every 3. We're making tremendous progress. And again, we pack a big punch against poverty when we combine our talents and resources as Rotarians. The GLP has 207 textbook programs, 94 literacy projects, 53 schools with computer centers, educating 13,000 kids every day, 731 kids on scholarships. In total, 57,000 students that are directly being served by this Rotary project each and every day in 2020 alone. 3 years ago, we had the great honor of receiving a visit from then President of Rotary International, Ian Risley. Here is Ian with his wife, Juliet. They are touring the education center that we have in Guatemala. And Rotarian Risley said, after seeing this project and getting out and meeting these kids and seeing how it all works, this is the gold standard of Rotary projects throughout the world. Great compliment he paid. So how does the GLP get people out of poverty? We focus on instilling in kids 3 basic competencies. We know from our experience and from research that if we can instill these competencies in kids, we will get them out of poverty or at least on a pathway out of poverty. First one is reading. There's nothing more fundamental than reading and literacy, nothing more Rotary than literacy. Technical skills. 2/3 of the jobs in Guatemala require significant technical skills. The kids in the rural areas have no access to computers. And graduation. We know that if kids just get that high school diploma, it's like a train ticket out of poverty. So to tell you a little bit more about each of our projects, let me begin with Spark Reading. So we need Spark Reading in Guatemala because, as I mentioned before, 1/3 of the country currently cannot read or write. Here's an illustration, a symbol of this high level of illiteracy. So I'm visiting a school with a bunch of other Rotarians, and we had just dedicated a textbook project. The parents committee came up and they presented us this document. This is the last page of about a 5-page document. What are these marks? So they're fingerprints. They're fingerprints. They're from people who they're completely illiterate and they can't even write their own name. So the parents committee presented this. They were asking Rotary, hey, we did such a good job with the textbook program. Would you consider giving us a computer lab? All the members of the parents committee that could write their names signed it at the top, and all of those that could not sign with a fingerprint, and the school secretary wrote their name above their print. The fingerprint in Guatemala is a symbol of illiteracy. So what do we do about it? How does our program address this? Well, we've come to learn over the last 10 years for this project that a powerful combination to deal with illiteracy is to make sure that the kids in school today learn to read well by the 2nd grade. And we can affect that change by training their teachers. So many teachers in Guatemala went to school themselves without books. When they were grade school kids and junior high kids and high school kids, they had no books in the classroom. They had no books in their homes. So if you provide them books today, they have very little idea how to use them to really engage the kids in reading and teach them to read. So we found a very powerful combination. 2 years of intensive training for the teachers, along with a rich in-classroom library of about 150 books. And you put those 2 powerful things together, training plus materials, and you get a huge bounce, a doubling of the amount that the kids learn during the class day, doubling compared to schools that don't have this program. Now, it's critical in this project to make sure that the books are put inside the classrooms. The libraries have to be in the classroom. We found over the years that if those books go in the principal's office, if they go in the school library, they don't get used. You'll come back a year later, the teachers will proudly show you the books and how well they're taking care of them, but the problem is that most of them will still be in the shrink wrap. They don't get used unless they're in the classroom. So what types of new strategies are the teachers learning in these classes? They learn about 150 new teaching strategies, and one of them, and I wouldn't have believed this had I not seen it myself, but teachers who are not used to teaching literacy often forget when you ask them, say, hey, will you read this book to your students? And they hold that book up. And they'll read it to their students, but it never occurs to them to turn the book around and show their students the pictures. And it's the pictures that are the thing that bring the kids in and get them interested in the book. So they learn this and many, many other strategies. Reader's theater. A way to get kids more interested in reading is to read them the book and then let them act out the story themselves. It reinforces the vocabulary in context and greatly accelerates kids' progress toward reading comprehension. And the kids love it. And they end up by writing their own books. So over time, the 150 copy classroom library gets bigger and bigger as kids write their own books. First, they write the books that they hear read to them in class, and then they start creating their own titles. Here's the graduation ceremony at the end of 2 years. So these teachers put an enormous effort in over 2 years. They're so proud when they finally graduate. We throw them a huge party and a huge graduation ceremony, and they get a diploma from Rotary, the Ministry of Education, and Cooperative for Education. I'm so proud of these teachers. Over the years, the GLP has trained an army of 800 of them, 800 teachers to go out and train and teach kids. Even if we stop today, even if this project did not expand any further, these 800 teachers will go on in their career to educate 2.5 million Guatemalan students in their careers. That's an entire generation of Guatemalan school children. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what it looks like to change the world through Rotary service. So moving on to our middle school program and how we provide textbooks. So 90% of rural students do not have access to textbooks. Their schools simply do not have written materials of any kind. So you'll walk in the classroom and you'll see students sitting at desks, nothing on the walls. They'll be facing a teacher at the front of the room, and he'll have an old-fashioned chalkboard and a little stubby piece of chalk about that big. And that's all the resources they have in the room. This project provides 4 books per grade level in the core subjects of math, science, Spanish language, and social studies. And guess who gets to help us bring these books down and distribute them to the kids? You, Rotarians from all over the world, come down as volunteers to help us distribute these books. We take groups down 3 or 4 times a year. We would love to have you join one of these trips. It's an experience of a lifetime. And what's the impact? So we find that with textbooks in the classroom, teachers get about 1/4 of their time back. So this is time that they're saved from writing on the board or dictating to their students. Their students already have the material in front of them in the books. Also with COVID-19, we're locked down here in the United States. They're also locked down in Guatemala. The kids are out of school right now. And we've had teacher after teacher after teacher reach out to us on Facebook thanking the GLP for providing these books because it lets their students learn from home. So kids that are in this program, there's 200 community schools in this program. All of those schools are able to have their students studying at home in the 4 core subjects due to the fact that they have textbooks and none of the other schools around them have the books. In addition, we found that our students that have the books score significantly higher on national tests in math and in reading than students that don't. So we see a big, big boost once the books go into the classroom. So many schools in Guatemala, after they have the textbooks for a few years and do really well with that program, begin asking us, is there any way we can get computers? We feel like we're falling behind out here in the rural areas. Is there any way we can get computers for this school? And so we began this project back in 2001. And it basically addresses the problem in Guatemala that 60% of mid-level jobs require significant computer skills. So that's in the cities, basically. But the population, especially out in the rural areas who could aspire to these jobs, have never touched a keyboard, never touched a mouse, never touched a tablet. You sit a kid down in front of the computer, you hand them a mouse, and they're all over the screen with that mouse. They don't even have the fine motor skills yet to effectively use that technology. 3 years later, after 100 lessons in this program, the kids are experts. They know more than I do and can make that program in the computer do whatever they want it to do. 95% of them, 95% after this program, go on to find either employment or continue their education to a higher level. Now, if all we did was show up in a community and pick up books and drop them off and computers and drop them off at the school by the truckload and put up our Rotary wheel and shake hands and take a bunch of pictures and head home and pat ourselves on the back, if that's all we did, I would not be very excited about this program. What's exciting about it to me is the sustainability, is the fact that once these programs are set up, they are 100% financially self-sustaining forever. If you come back 20 years later, 30 years later, you will still see books and still see computers in these schools. And how? How does that happen? Here's our sustainability plan. And every school has this model, and they have to adopt it in order to have the project. Let's say a book costs $5. The principal has to agree to rent that book to his kids for $1 per year per book per kid. So let's say in year one, we rent the book to a kid for $1. Then in year two, a different kid uses it and he contributes $1. Year three, another kid, he contributes $1, $4, $5. After 5 years, what have I done? I've regenerated that initial $5 investment. So I put in $5 and I got back out $5. The $5 I got back out then goes to fund the replacement of books as they wear out. It's a self-financing cycle. It's been working for 22 years throughout Guatemala in over 300 community schools. So our last program is called RISE, and that's our scholarship program. RISE basically deals with the issue in Guatemala that only 1 out of every 10 kids in the rural areas graduates from high school. 1 out of every 10. So I'd like all of you today in my audience to think about, where would you be today? What would you be doing if you did not have a high school diploma? I imagine most of you have high school and much beyond that. But if you didn't even have a high school diploma, where would you be today and what would you be doing? How would it have limited your life? So think about that in Guatemala. Kids need a high school diploma. Studies show that if they have just that high school diploma, just 12 years of education, they will be out of poverty for the rest of their lives, and they will have a door open to them to the middle class. The high school diploma is that key factor. But there's many reasons that keep kids out of school. So about 1/3 of the reason the kids don't go to school are economics. They don't have the money. About 2/3 are other reasons. Maybe it's violence in the home, maybe it's alcoholism. A big reason is just simply lack of belief that they can, lack of motivation, and just lack of very low expectations for themselves. And the RISE program addresses all of these things along with giving them the financial scholarship. The kids get job skills, like learning how to interview. So this is a girl learning how to interview with a professional HR manager from Domino's Pizza in Guatemala. What you can't see in the picture is that there are about 60 kids in the audience watching her. She's nervous, but she's being taught how to fake it till she makes it, how to look your interviewer in the eye, how to put together a resume and accentuate your strengths. If you ask a kid in Guatemala what they want to be when they grow up, about 80% of the kids will say, I want to be a teacher. And why is that? Because in the rural areas, a teacher is often the only professional person they ever see. So they all want to be teachers. They have very little idea what opportunities could be available to them if they only got an education. So the kids in this program get to go out. We take them to factories, to banks, to hospitals. This is an agricultural packing facility, and show them the types of jobs that they can aspire to if they finish school. Teach them life skills like leadership skills. We teach them how to solve problems in their own community. And finally, this would not be a Rotary project if RISE scholars didn't learn how to do community service. The kids design their own community service projects, and they learn to give back and the importance of giving back. We see these kids as poor. They're in their communities, and they see other people as even poorer than they are. They can't afford to go to school. There are people in their community who can't afford to eat, and they help those people. I'd like to share with you a little story. This is Anselma Ortiz Monroy. I met her back when she was a shy little sixth grader from a village near Antigua. Her mom and dad were completely illiterate subsistence farmers. As a sixth grader, she was in her last year of school because her parents could not afford to send her on. Her teacher reached out on her behalf to Rotary and to co-ed to see if she could get a scholarship. We offered her one, but her dad said, no, Anselma, you are not going to continue to school. You've had 6 years of education. I never had any education. You've had 6 years. You can read and write now. We don't need, and you're a girl. We don't need you to go to school any further. Her teacher intervened on her behalf because Anselma so much wanted to go to school. She wanted to be like her teacher. She wanted to continue her education. Her mom intervened. I intervened. In the end, we convinced her dad to let her go to school. Her dad said, okay, I'll let her go, but she's on her own. I am not going to be any part of this. She's on her own. Anselma worked hard through 3 years of junior high, 3 years of high school. She became the first person in her family to graduate from high school. Here she is today. This is about 15 years later. And there's Anselma. She's standing next to her mom and her mom's mom. It's one of my favorite pictures. So Anselma is now just completed college. She is making 4 times more than her father. She is solidly middle class. She's standing next to her mother, who is completely illiterate and desperately poor, and her grandmother, also completely illiterate, desperately poor. In one generation, we have broken the cycle of poverty in this family through education. And the story doesn't end there. What excites me so much when we help these kids, and I've been around long enough that kids that I held on my lap when they were little kids, those kids are now having their own kids. Okay, so this is Anselma's daughter, Abigail. And what really excites me about this project is that Abigail will never need a scholarship from Rotary. She will never need one. And why? Because her mom and her dad are solidly middle class because of education. They can afford to pay for the educational expenses of their own daughter. So I would like to extend a personal invitation to each of you listening to me today. Get involved in this great work. We would love to have you as part of this. And here are 2 easy ways to get involved. First, we invite you and your club to join our global grant. Every year we put together a global grant that combines the resources of up to 200 Rotary clubs from about 30 different districts, usually from 8 or 9 different countries. All you have to do is make a small contribution. You get included in the global grant. We do all the paperwork, and we will get that, whatever you put in, we will get that matched, usually 3.5 to 1. If you're a Canadian club, it's 6 to 1. Join our global grant and become part of this great project. A lot of times I'll speak at a club, they'll pass the hat, they throw in just $100. Give me $100, put it into the project, and we'll get that matched and become part of this great work. A typical contribution is more like $1,000, but whatever you could afford, get involved, join us, join our club for the global grant. Another great way to get involved is come with us to Guatemala. See your dollars at work, get your hands dirty, participate directly in a hands-on Rotary service project. We have 9-day trips, we have 5-day trips. Come down to Guatemala, help us distribute those books, dedicate those computer centers, and have just a great time. Some wonderful Rotary fellowship with Rotarians from all over the world. Lots of Guatemalan Rotarians involved in this. Come down to Guatemala with us. You find that these trips can be life-changing. Become part of our family. And if you want to find out more information about what we're talking about today, find us on the web at guatemalaliteracy.org. So guatemalaliteracy.org, check us out. And again, thank you so much for your attention today. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, virtually, to speak to your club.